The winter skies darken as ancient legends whisper through time. What if the jolly figure we know today as Santa Claus was once something far more terrifying? A one-eyed god racing across storm-swept skies, leading a hunt of spectral warriors and the souls of the dead. This is not a fairy tale. This is Odin, the All-Father of Norse mythology, the true inspiration behind our modern Christmas icon. But the transformation from fearsome deity to beloved gift giver hides secrets that will change everything you thought you knew about the holiday season. Long before shopping malls and Christmas trees, before the first church bell rang across northern Europe, the Germanic peoples celebrated something darker and more primal than Christmas. They called it Yule, 12 days beginning at the winter solstice, when the world balanced between death and rebirth. At the center of these celebrations stood Odin, the All-Father, a god unlike any other. With his single piercing eye, the other sacrificed for infinite wisdom, and his flowing gray beard, Odin commanded respect and terror in equal measure. The Norse called him by hundreds of names, but during the Yule season, he became Jalnir, the Yule One, and Julfar, the Yule Father. While families huddled inside their halls, feasting on roasted meats and drinking great quantities of ale, they knew that outside, in the howling winter darkness, something magnificent and terrifying was taking place. This was not the time for carols and merriment alone. This was when the barrier between worlds grew thin, and the god of death himself took to the skies. The celebration of Yule stretched across 12 nights, each one charged with supernatural danger and possibility. Archaeological evidence shows that the Germanic peoples took these celebrations with deadly seriousness. Sacrificial altars have been uncovered bearing traces of animal blood, confirming ancient accounts that cattle, pigs, and other livestock were slaughtered during these festivals. The meat was cooked and shared in great communal feasts, while the blood was sometimes sprinkled on altars and participants alike, a ritual blessing meant to secure divine favor. Toasts were raised not to abstract concepts, but to specific gods: Odin for victory and wisdom, Freyr for fertility and prosperity, Njrr for safe passage through the harsh winter months. These were not symbolic gestures, but earnest invocations to beings the Norse believed actively shaped their fates. Gift-giving occurred during Yule, but it bore little resemblance to modern Christmas presents. Practical items dominated: candles and oil lamps to fight back the darkness, dried foods to survive until spring, tools and weapons for the work ahead. The idea of giving for pure pleasure existed, but it was secondary to survival. The phenomenon that defined Yule was known as the Wild Hunt, Odin's most fearsome display of power. Picture this: storm clouds gathering over frozen Scandinavian landscapes, wind screaming through bare trees, and suddenly, the sound of hoofbeats thundering across the sky. Odin rode Sleipnir, his 8-legged horse that could leap incredible distances and race faster than any earthly steed. Behind him came a terrifying procession: Valkyries, ghostly warriors, the souls of the honored dead, his 2 wolves Jerry and Freki, and his ravens Hugin and Munin circling overhead. Some accounts speak of 20 or 30 spectral huntsmen on black horses, accompanied by demon-like hounds with eyes that burned like coals. The purpose of this hunt was profound. Odin swept across all 9 realms, collecting the souls of those who had died throughout the year, clearing away the old to make room for new life as the days began to lengthen. Farmers and warriors alike made sacrifices during these 12 nights, not in celebration, but in desperate hope that they would not accidentally be caught outside and swept away with the dead. The Wild Hunt was called by many names across Germanic territories: Oscoria in Norway, Askerdrian meaning the Asgard Ride, or simply Odin's Jakt, Odin's Hunt. The terror it inspired was real and practical. Winter travel in Scandinavia was genuinely dangerous, with blizzards, freezing temperatures, and treacherous terrain claiming lives regularly. When travelers disappeared during the Yule season, communities attributed their deaths to the Wild Hunt. Perhaps they had been caught outside during the spectral procession and swept away. Some folklore traditions preserved specific warnings about encountering the hunt. In certain regions, people were told that if they heard the distant baying of Odin's hounds, one barking louder than the other, they should immediately throw themselves face down on the ground and cover their heads until the sounds passed. To stand and watch the hunt was to invite death or madness. Stories from Småland in southern Sweden describe how Odin hunted with large birds, as well as hounds, possibly his two ravens, taking on more terrifying forms during these nocturnal expeditions. The hunt swept not just through the physical world, but through all realms of Norse cosmology, racing across Midgard where humans lived, diving into the shadowy realm of Helheim to collect the dead, perhaps even breaching the walls of Asgard itself. This was cosmic housekeeping on a divine scale, and mortals were wise to stay clear of such dangerous work. Yet for all its terror, the wild hunt carried another dimension that has been largely forgotten. Odin was not merely a god of death. He was also Oski, the wish-granter. Norse children were taught a tradition that would echo through the centuries. They would place their boots by the hearth, filling them with straw and carrots for hungry Sleipnir after his long journey across the winter skies. And Odin, in his strange generosity, would reward this kindness. When dawn broke and the hunt had passed, children would discover that their offerings had been replaced with gifts, tokens of favor from the Allfather himself. Those whom Odin favored during his nocturnal ride would receive good fortune for the coming year, while those who earned his displeasure might find only misfortune. The Norse understood that the same God who could steal souls could also bestow blessings. This duality, terrifying yet generous, deathly yet life-giving, was central to Odin's nature. He was not a simple figure to be loved or feared, but something more complex, more human in his contradictions than any deity, before or since. Historical sources confirm that Odin was indeed associated with gift-giving beyond the children's boot tradition. The 13th century historian Snorri Sturluson records in his Heimskringla, the Chronicle of the Kings of Norway, that King Olaf gave gifts to loyal followers during Yule, consciously echoing what was believed to be Odin's own practice. The Allfather was known for arriving in disguise, often as an old wandering man with a staff and wide-brimmed hat, and bestowing gifts upon those who showed him hospitality, wisdom, or courage. These gifts might be magical items, divine knowledge, or simply good luck. The parallel to Santa Claus rewarding good children becomes obvious when viewed through this lens. Both figures appear during the darkest part of winter. Both judge worthiness, both bestow gifts, and both are associated with supernatural travel. The primary difference is that Odin's judgment was far more severe, and his rewards and punishments carried genuine life-or-death consequences. A poor harvest, a lost battle, an unexpected illness, all could be attributed to losing Odin's favor during the Yule season. Odin's obsession with knowledge shaped everything about him. This was a god who had hung himself from Yggdrasil, the world tree, for 9 days and nights, pierced by his own spear, without food or water, enduring unimaginable agony to learn the secrets of the runes. He had sacrificed his eye at the well of Mimir to gain wisdom that allowed him to see all that transpired across the 9 realms. His 2 ravens, Hugin and Munin, thought and memory, flew out each day to gather information from every corner of existence, returning each evening to whisper their discoveries into his remaining ear. This relentless pursuit of knowledge made Odin dangerous. He knew the futures of gods and men alike, understood the magic that shaped reality itself, and commanded the ability to see beyond the veil of death. When Christianity began spreading through northern Europe in the 9th and 10th centuries, missionaries encountered a population who revered this complex, one-eyed wanderer who traveled the world in disguise, testing the hospitality and wisdom of mortals. The Christian concept of an all-knowing God who judges humanity's actions found surprising resonance with Odin's attributes. But there was a problem that would take centuries to resolve. The poem Havamal, one of the most important texts in the Poetic Edda, consists entirely of wisdom attributed to Odin. In it, the Allfather recounts his self-sacrifice on the world tree. I know that I hung on a windrock tree 9 whole nights with a spear wounded, and to Odin offered myself to myself, on that tree, of which no one knows from what root it springs. This is not a god born into power, but one who earned every scrap of his wisdom through suffering and sacrifice. The runes he discovered through this ordeal were not merely an alphabet, but channels of magical power. ways to shape reality through words, songs, and incantations. Odin then did something remarkable. He shared this knowledge with humanity. Unlike many deities who hoarded their power, Odin gave humans the tools for wisdom, communication, and cultural expression. This generosity established him as Alfair, the All-Father, not just the father of gods, but a nurturing figure who provided for all intelligent beings. His omniscience was not passive observation, but active gathering of information. Those ravens flying out each morning and returning each night created a vast intelligence network that spanned all of existence. Nothing escaped Odin's notice, a trait that would later transfer seamlessly to Santa Claus, and his mysterious ability to know when children are sleeping, when they're awake, when they've been bad or good. The single motif is significant here. Odin saw more with one eye than other gods saw with two, because his vision was augmented by supernatural knowledge. His empty eye socket was not a weakness, but a badge of his commitment to understanding the cosmos at any cost. As Christian missionaries pushed deeper into Scandinavia, they faced a dilemma. The Germanic peoples would not easily abandon their gods, especially not Odin, who was woven into the fabric of their understanding of the cosmos, wisdom, warfare, and the changing seasons. The Church's solution was both clever and ruthless. They would not eliminate Odin, but transform him. The process was gradual, taking place over several centuries. First came King Hakon of Norway, who in the 10th century issued decrees that the pagan Yule celebration should coincide with Christmas, effectively merging the two festivals. The feasting, gift-giving, and 12 days of celebration remained, but their official purpose shifted from honoring Odin to celebrating Christ's birth. Meanwhile, Saint Nicholas of Myra, a 4th century Greek bishop known for his secret generosity to the poor, became increasingly popular in Christian Europe. Nicholas had given bags of gold to impoverished families under cover of darkness, asking nothing in return, a charitable act that resonated with common people. By the Middle Ages, stories of St. Nicholas had spread across Europe, and in the Netherlands, he became Sinterklaas, an elderly man with a white beard and red cloak who rode across rooftops on his white horse, delivering gifts through chimneys to well-behaved children on December 6th, his feast day. This transformation was not accidental. Church authorities understood that people needed their winter celebrations, needed the promise of gifts and divine favor during the darkest, coldest, most dangerous time of year. Rather than demanding the immediate abandonment of beloved traditions, they performed a kind of theological surgery, extracting the pagan elements that contradicted Christian doctrine while preserving the cultural practices people cherished. Odin's more terrifying aspects were deliberately suppressed. The wild hunt became associated with demons and devils rather than gods. Its appearance transformed from a sacred if dangerous event into a manifestation of evil to be feared and avoided. The Church taught that any supernatural activity during winter that didn't involve angels or saints must be demonic in origin. This redefinition allowed them to maintain that winter was still a special time, but rechannel devotion away from Odin and toward Christian figures. Saint Nicholas became the repository for Odin's benevolent traits. The white beard remained. The winter appearance remained. The gift-giving remained. The supernatural ability to travel vast distances in a single night remained. The judgment of behavior remained. But now these attributes belong to a Christian saint rather than a pagan god, making them acceptable to the Church and accessible to newly converted populations who still mourn the loss of their old beliefs. Now here's where the story becomes truly fascinating. And I need you to pay close attention because what happened next shaped the holiday we know today. When Dutch immigrants arrived in New Amsterdam, what would become New York, in the 17th century, they brought their Sinterklaas traditions with them. The English-speaking colonists gradually corrupted the name into Santa Claus, but something interesting was happening beneath the surface. The Dutch Sinterklaas rode a white horse, but this was no ordinary horse. The descriptions of this steed, its ability to leap across rooftops, its supernatural endurance, all echoed the old stories of Sleipnir. The white beard, the winter journey, the gift-giving, the judgment of children's behavior, even the tradition of leaving treats for the magical steed. all of these elements had belonged to Odin first. The church had successfully channeled Odin's more benevolent aspects into a Christian saint, stripping away the terrifying elements of the wild hunt while preserving the gift-giving tradition that families loved. But the transformation wasn't complete. The American colonies provided fertile ground for further evolution of the Santa Claus figure. Unlike Europe, where centuries of tradition and church authority constrained innovation, America's cultural melting pot and relative religious freedom allowed for more creative reinterpretation. Different immigrant communities brought different versions of winter gift givers. The English had Father Christmas, the Germans had Weihnachtsmann. The Scandinavian immigrants still remembered Odin's traditions, even if they didn't openly worship him. All these traditions began to blend and merge in the New World, creating something that was simultaneously familiar and new. The transition from Santa Claus's single horse to Santa's multiple reindeer is particularly significant. While 8 reindeer pulling a sleigh might seem whimsical, the number 8 resonates deeply with Odin's mythology. Sleipnir's 8 legs that allowed it to travel between worlds. It's as if the transformation process took Odin's 8-legged steed and split it into 8 separate animals, maintaining the numerical symbolism while making the image more palatable to Christian sensibilities. After all, an 8-legged horse is obviously supernatural and pagan in origin, but 8 ordinary reindeer pulling a sleigh? That's just creative license in a children's story. Or so it seemed. If you're enjoying this story and want to learn more about ancient mythology and its influence on modern culture, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel. There's so much more to discover about how the old gods still shape our world today. The next chapters reveal how American culture completed Odin's transformation into the Santa we know today, and the surprising ways his ancient power still echoes in our modern celebrations. The 19th century brought the final metamorphosis. In 1823, an American professor named Clement Clarke published a poem called A Visit from St. Nicholas, better known today as The Night Before Christmas. This single work of literature would crystallize the image of Santa Claus for generations. Moore transformed Santa Claus's single horse into 8 flying reindeer, a number that eerily echoes Sleipnir's 8 legs. He described Santa as a jolly old elf, emphasizing the magical, supernatural nature of the figure. The reindeer had names: Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, Vixen, Comet, Cupid, Donder, and Blitzen, the last 2 being Dutch and German words meaning thunder and lightning, violent weather phenomena long associated with Odin storms. Then came the illustrators. Thomas Nast, a German-American cartoonist, created the definitive visual image of Santa Claus for Harper's Weekly in the 1860s and 1870s. He placed Santa at the North Pole, a mysterious, unreachable place in the 19th century, much like the distant realm of Asgard. He gave Santa a workshop filled with elves, beings from Norse mythology who were master craftsmen in the service of the gods. The elves making toys echoed the dwarves of Norse legend who had forged Odin's spear Gungnir and other magical artifacts. Moore's poem accomplished something remarkable. It took disparate European traditions and synthesized them into a cohesive American mythology. The work became instantly popular, reprinted in newspapers across the country, memorized by children, and referenced in countless other works. Within a few decades, Moore's version of Santa Claus had become the default image in American consciousness. But look closely at what Moore preserved from Odin's mythology. Santa arrives at night during the darkest part of winter, just like the Wild Hunt. He travels with impossible speed, visiting every house in the world in a single night, just like Odin racing across all 9 realms. He enters through the chimney, the same way Odin was said to enter Viking longhouses through smoke holes in the roof. He knows whether children have been good or bad, maintaining Odin's omniscient surveillance. He rewards the worthy with gifts, just as Odin rewarded those who showed him hospitality and virtue. The choice to name 2 of the reindeer Donder and Blitzen is particularly revealing. Thunder and lightning were the domain of Thor, Odin's son, but they were also associated with the storms that accompanied the Wild Hunt. By naming the reindeer after these violent weather phenomena, Moore unconsciously preserved the connection to those terrifying winter storms that the Norse associated with Odin's passage across the sky. The reindeer themselves were significant. These were not animals from the Mediterranean world of St. Nicholas, but creatures of the far north, the lands where Odin had reigned supreme. In Scandinavia, reindeer had long been used to pull sleighs, making them the practical equivalent of Sleipnir for ordinary humans. By giving Santa reindeer instead of a horse, more simultaneously Americanized the figure and maintained its northern Norse roots. The commercial explosion of Christmas in the 20th century completed Odin's disguise. In 1931, Coca-Cola commissioned artist Hadden Sundblom to create advertisements featuring Santa Claus. Sundblom's paintings established the red and white suit that has become universal, colors that had belonged to St. Nicholas's bishop's robes, but also to the festive garments described in Germanic Yule celebrations. Santa's list of who's been naughty or nice directly parallels Odin's omniscient knowledge, gained through his ravens and his own sacrificed eye. The concept of Santa watching children throughout the year, knowing their every action, is eerily similar to Odin's role as the all-seeing All-Father. The chimney entrance, a feature that made little practical sense in modern homes, preserved the ancient memory of Odin slipping down smoke holes in Viking longhouses to leave his gifts by the hearth. Even the reindeer, which seemed so whimsical, carry traces of their origin. Reindeer were the sleigh-pulling animals of Scandinavia, the lands where Odin reigned supreme. Rudolph, added in 1939, with his glowing red nose guiding Santa through winter storms, echoes the supernatural light that would have announced the approach of the wild hunt, that eerie glow in the storm clouds that meant Odin was near. The Coca-Cola campaign is often mistakenly credited with inventing the modern image of Santa Claus, but in truth, Sundblom was synthesizing elements that already existed. What he did accomplish was standardizing these elements through mass media. His paintings appeared in magazines, on billboards, in newspapers, anywhere Coca-Cola advertised. Within a few years, any competing visions of Santa Claus had been overwhelmed by Sundblom's version. This created a remarkable situation. A deity from Norse mythology had been successfully repackaged as a commercial icon for an American soft drink company, and nobody recognized what had happened. The domestication was complete. The naughty or nice list deserves special attention because it represents perhaps the most direct survival of Odin's divine attributes. In Norse belief, Odin's ravens hug in and Munin flew throughout the world each day, observing everything that happened and reporting back to the All-Father each night. This gave Odin perfect knowledge of human behavior, who was honorable, who was treacherous, who was brave, who was cowardly. During Yule, this knowledge determined who received his favor and who did not. Santa's list serves the exact same function: perfect surveillance of human behavior leading to judgment and the distribution of rewards or punishments. Parents telling children Santa is watching are unknowingly invoking the all-seeing gaze of the one-eyed God. The North Pole location also carried deeper meaning than most people realize. In Norse cosmology, the cosmos was organized around a great world tree, Yggdrasil, whose branches extended into all realms. The north was particularly significant as the direction of greatest cold and darkness, where frost giants dwelt and winter originated. By placing Santa at the North Pole, Nast and others were unconsciously positioning him at a cosmological equivalent of Asgard, a distant, unreachable realm at the extreme edge of the known world, accessible only to supernatural beings. What's remarkable is how thoroughly this transformation succeeded in erasing Odin from popular consciousness while preserving so many of his attributes. Most people who celebrate Christmas have no idea that when they tell their children about Santa's magical abilities, his knowledge of all their actions, his supernatural speed traveling the entire world in a single night, his home in an unreachable polar realm, his elvish servants, and his flying steeds, they are describing a god. Not just any god, but one of the most complex and powerful deities in European mythology. The wild hunt itself didn't disappear, it transformed. The terrifying spectral procession became a cheerful sleigh ride. The eight-legged steed of death became 8 reindeer pulling a sleigh full of presents. The one-eyed wanderer testing human virtue became a friendly figure rewarding children's good behavior. The Yule Father became Father Christmas, who became Santa Claus. Yet beneath this transformation, something essential remained: the midwinter visit of a supernatural being who knows all, sees all, and rewards or withholds favor based on behavior. This is not merely a pleasant holiday fiction. It's a domesticated remnant of something ancient and powerful that once commanded both terror and devotion across Northern Europe. Consider the deeper implications of this transformation. A god who demanded blood sacrifices, who led armies of the dead, who was associated with war, death, magic, and forbidden knowledge. This god has been so thoroughly rehabilitated that millions of Christian families now celebrate a festival centered around him, without realizing it. The Church's strategy of transformation rather than elimination proved far more effective than outright suppression could ever have been. By allowing Odin to continue existing in modified form, they satisfied people's need for winter celebration while directing their worship toward Christian figures. And in doing so, they accidentally preserved Odin's mythology more effectively than any conscious effort at historical preservation could have achieved. Every time a child sets out cookies and milk on Christmas Eve, every time a parent warns that Santa is watching, every time a family sings about reindeer on the rooftop or tells stories about the North Pole workshop, they are performing rituals that trace directly back to pagan Scandinavia, to Viking longhouses where offerings were made to gods, to winter nights when the barrier between worlds grew thin and the All-Father rode the storms. The god did not die. He simply learned to smile, put on a red suit, and let the world forget his name while remembering everything else about him. So when you see Santa Claus this Christmas season, in shopping malls, on greeting cards, in movies and advertisements, know that you're looking at one of the most successful transformations in religious and cultural history. The Church succeeded in Christianizing Odin, stripping away his dangerous edges, his association with death and war and dark magic, while preserving his gift-giving and his connection to the winter season. American commercialism then sanitized him further, creating the perpetually jolly, non-threatening figure we know today. But the truth remains: every time you leave cookies and milk by the fireplace, you're echoing an ancient offering to a god's magical steed. Every time you speak of Santa's workshop at the North Pole, you're pointing toward a mythical realm where gods and elves dwell. Every time you remind children that he knows if you've been bad or good, you're invoking the all-seeing wisdom of the All-Father. Odin, the god who sacrificed everything for knowledge, who rode the winter storms leading an army of the dead, who was feared and honored in equal measure, still lives. He just wears a red suit now, and he's learned to smile for the cameras. The Wild Hunt has become a sleigh ride, but it's still the same ancient journey across the winter sky, and somewhere in the howling of December winds, you can still hear the echo of Sleipnir's hoofbeats if you listen carefully enough. The transformation tells us something profound about how religions and cultures evolve. Nothing truly disappears. It merely changes form, adapts to new contexts, finds new expressions. The gods of old were not defeated by Christianity, but absorbed, transformed, and repackaged. Odin's survival as Santa Claus demonstrates the resilience of mythological archetypes. Humanity apparently needs the figure of the wise, all-knowing winter gift-giver, whether he's called Julfar or Saint Nicholas or Santa Claus. The names change, the theological framework changes, but the essential role remains constant. And perhaps there's something fitting in Odin, of all gods, experiencing this transformation. He was, after all, the god of wisdom, magic, and shape-shifting. He frequently traveled the world in disguise, taking on different forms and identities to test mortals and accomplish his goals. In a sense, his transformation into Santa Claus is the ultimate disguise, so effective that even those who celebrate him have forgotten who he really is. The trickster god's final trick, hiding in plain sight for over 1,000 years, worshipped by billions who have no idea they're honoring a deity whose origins stretch back to the dawn of Germanic civilization. Next time December arrives and the winter winds begin to howl, next time you hear stories of flying reindeer and magical journeys and gifts delivered in secret darkness, remember what you're really hearing. Remember the one-eyed god who traded everything for wisdom, who commanded the respect and terror of entire civilizations, who rode the winter storms, collecting souls and bestowing blessings. Remember Odin, the All-Father, the Wish-Grantair, the Master of Yule. He never left. He's still here, watching, judging, rewarding the worthy, and passing over the rest. The wild hunt continues its eternal journey. We've just forgotten what we're really celebrating when we await Santa's arrival on Christmas Eve. This transformation from feared Norse deity to beloved Christmas icon reveals something profound about how cultures evolve and adapt their mythologies. What do you think about this connection? Did you suspect Santa Claus had such ancient and dramatic origins? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Tell me, does knowing about Odin change how you see Santa Claus, or does it make the tradition even more meaningful? If you found this journey through mythology fascinating, please subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories about the gods, legends, and hidden histories that shaped our modern world. We have so many more astonishing revelations waiting to be uncovered. And stay tuned for our next exploration into another mythological figure whose true story will absolutely astound you. The old gods are closer than you think, and their stories are far more amazing than you ever imagined.